The wind that evening rattled the bedroom blinds of 14B Elmhurst Towers, turning their plastic slats into castanets and sending a restless undercurrent through Atlas. A blue brindle pit bull with a low center of gravity and a temperament 1 part golden retriever, 1 part retired linebacker. He'd spent most of the day napping near the living room window while ambient rain painted watery Morse code down the pane. But now, at 11:47 p.m., his ears existed in one of 2 states: pricked forward like radar dishes or swiveled back to catch murmurs the building's concrete ribs carried upward from distant floors. Across town, 32 miles west on the I-90 corridor, registered nurse Marisol Vega shuffled through the fluorescent hush of a regional trauma center, her overnight shift spinning into its 12th hour. She'd left Atlas in the care of Rover-certified sitter Gabe Nguyen. But Gabe's sudden bout of food poisoning had triggered Plan B. Marisol enabled her apartment's smart speaker security profile, nicknamed Drop Guardian, and asked the neighbor's college-age daughter to let Atlas out for a quick evening break. After the dog's return, every motion sensor, deadbolt, and camera fed into a single dashboard widget on Marisol's smartwatch. If all went well, she'd be home for breakfast burritos and belly rubs by 8:15. Atlas, however, had his reservations about all going well. The smart home layout. Elmhurst Towers was a 1980s concrete affair retrofitted with just modern enough wiring. Marisol's unit boasted 2 2K security cams, 1 in the entryway, 1 aimed across the kitchen living room open plan, a smart speaker in each, Echo Nexus modules daisy-chained into an apartment-wide intercom usable by voice command or loud ambient audio, contact sensors on front door, balcony sliders, even the seldom-used soffit window in the pantry. A drop-in routine. If a wake word plus decibel threshold triggered between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., the primary speaker auto-initiated a 2-way call to Marisol's phone and began continuous recording to cloud. She'd trained Atlas to treat the wake word as a fetch cue. Atlas. Guardian. That phrase usually meant, bark once. Sit. Get treat. Yet after a month of remote practice drills she discovered high-volume barking alone often fooled the acoustic gate into auto-dialing. A happy redundancy for a dog who considered communication a full-contact sport. The break. Somewhere around 11:53 p.m. The building's fire escape stairwell door 4 stories below failed to latch after a smoker's clandestine exit. Wind curled into cracked masonry, ferrying with it a stranger, later identified as Kyle Mercer. Petty theft repeat offender, currently hunting for laptops easy to fence and prescriptions easier. Mercer climbed the stairs slow, pausing at each landing to listen for televisions. Unit 14B's dark hallway, illuminated only by motion-responsive nightlights, offered stillness. He tested the knob, found deadbolt engaged, but noticed the backlit keypad for Marisol's electronic lock. Most residents relied on the factory 4-digit default before customizing. Mercer's burner phone hosted a list of published defaults. And tonight luck aligned. The lock chirped. He eased the door inward. 9 feet away Atlas rose from a downstay, ears sliding from curious to combat ready. The dog's first sound, a low thoracic rumble, stopped Mercer mid-step. 2 green LED eyes of the entry cam blinked to life. Its servo whir drew Mercer's own gaze. Maybe buying Atlas a half-second to close distance. But the dog didn't lunge. Instead he pivoted toward the speaker on the credenza. Thunk. That was the sound of a hard nose hitting plastic grill. Atlas barked. Not once but in a machine gun row. Deep enough to vibrate speaker casing. The wake word didn't matter. Decibel ceiling shattered. Drop Guardian engaged. The speaker announced in a cheery baritone. The nurse hears everything. Marisol had just scanned barcodes on a trauma bay morphine dose when her smartwatch buzzed. The display lit with live waveform oscillating like a seismograph. She tapped. Atlas's barks poured into her earbuds alongside the clatter of something metallic, maybe the umbrella stand tipping. Then she heard it. A voice she didn't know cursing under his breath. Followed by Atlas's nails scrambling on laminate. Atlas. Guardian, she shouted into mic. No way Atlas could hear. Drop-in was one way at first, but the routine flipped the mics both directions after answering. The speaker in her apartment echoed her command, feeding her voice back to the dog. And so Atlas' bark sat like he'd rehearsed, chest rumbling like distant thunder. Marisol switched to hospital VoIP, punched 911, rattled off her address, building code, and declared, "Intruder in home. Dog on site, live feed confirms. Dispatch time stamped call at 11:57 p.m. She toggled the security cam app. Grayscale night vision displayed Atlas blocking the kitchen threshold. Mercer framed near pantry arch, brandishing a screwdriver. Atlas's hackles formed a jagged dune, tail stiff horizontal. Marisol's heart slammed, still. Her voice flowed clinical calm. "Stay," she whispered, useless through one-way feed but soothing herself. Mercer barked cuss words at the dog, half swinging the screwdriver like a conductor's baton gone rogue. Atlas advanced 3 inches. Mercer backed into the fridge. Magnets clinking to floor. A jar toppled, shattering, glass shards spider-edged across tile. Police body cam arrival. Sirens crescendoed 4 minutes later, an eternity in cortisol time. Bodycam footage later leaked under FOIA request. Officers Ramirez and Dunlop sweep the hallway. Halligan tool poised, door ajar, dogs bark echoing. They announce, "Police, show hands." Another bark. Camera shakes as they enter. Mercer, cornered by countertops and 60 pounds of unyielding canine conviction, drops the screwdriver, hands high. Atlas remains statuesque until Ramirez commands, "Dog, down, I guess." But Atlas obeys. Click of cuffs. All under 45 seconds on bodycam timestamp. Post-incident data and network graphic. Cyber forensics later diagrammed a latency timeline. Wake word decibel trip, 0 sec. Drop and connect to Marisol, plus 3.1 seconds. 911 dial and dispatch, plus 34 seconds. Officers dispatched, plus 61 seconds. Intruder in custody, plus 447. A side panel compared to average burglary response, 12 plus minutes, illustrating how K9 triggered IoT escalation, shaved crisis lifespan by 60%. News graphics loved that tidbit, a smart speaker waveform morphing into a Pitbull silhouette. Transforming into a badge. Marisol and Atlas reunion. Marisol arrived home at 9:12. Pulse still thrumming hours later. Atlas met her at the door. Entire rear half wagging in roiling figure eights. She sank to her knees. Buried face in pepper and slate fur. Inhaled petrichor and faint speaker plastic. She whispered, "My heroic boy." Words swallowed by grateful sob. Wider impact. Within weeks, the story vaulted across national morning shows. Home Alone hound hails police via smart speaker. Tech podcasts dissected the Drop Guardian routine's open API scripting. Security firms drafted white papers citing voice trigger failure rates. Atlas's barking circumvented them. Pet tech startups rushed beta devices, paw-tap panic pads, bark to cloud routers. Yet amidst commercialization swirl, Marisol insisted on nuance during interviews. Atlas isn't a gadget. He's family whose instincts we chose to respect and integrate. Dawn the next day was austere and cloudless. The sort of January morning that feels as though the sky wants to pretend spring is a rumor. Yet inside Municipal Court 14, the temperature pulsed with something closer to July. Atlas's case, State versus Mercer, had drawn a menagerie of reporters. Tech bloggers, criminal justice watchdogs, and at least 2 venture capital scouts looking for the next smart home security darling. They filled every oak bench, craning for a glimpse of the defendant in his wrinkled jail jumpsuit or of the dog whose bark traveled the internet faster than any 911 dispatcher could type. Certification fast track. In the 48 hours since the break-in, Atlas hadn't merely been lauded on morning television. He'd been fast-tracked by the Diesel Carter Center's Urban Safety Division for Provisional Home Guardian K9 status. That meant a crash battery of impulse control tests, stranger approaches, and scent discrimination, ensuring the dog could tell delivery people from intruders by reading body tension and command words. He'd passed every trial with points to spare. Rowan Cho herself had FaceTimed in, beaming approval. Another Edge Sentinel. But this time for living rooms. Pre-trial motions. Defense attorney Byron Hale wore a navy suit 2 shades darker than his mood. He'd filed a suppression motion contending Atlas constituted excessive force by a dangerous animal, and that Mercer, cornered by a dog with a known breed propensity toward aggression. Had effectively surrendered under duress. Thus the confession he'd spilled to officers Ramirez and Dunlop. "I only wanted the pills," should be tossed. Prosecutor Elena Silva countered that Atlas operated under no police directive, and Mercer had still been wielding a burglary tool. Force? Possibly. Excessive? Ask the screwdriver. Judge Meredith Kwan, pragmatic and fond of coffee so strong it could vote, scheduled an evidentiary hearing. That's how Atlas, tethered to Marisol by a braided leather lead, wound up padding across polished linoleum while camera shutters stuttered like applause. His nails clicked, a small, staccato metronome resetting room tempo. He wore no muzzle. That fact alone served as silent argument. The demonstration. Prosecutor Silva queued up the night vision footage. Courtroom screens flickered. Mercer's silhouette sliding in. Atlas stepping into frame. Barking. Retreat. Re-bark. Silva froze at the moment Mercer hurled a coffee mug lid toward Atlas, projectile aggression preceding surrender. She rewound. Played again. Gasps where courtroom watchers hadn't seen angle before. Defense attorney Hale took his turn. He called a hired canine behavior expert, who insisted that any large dog barking in a darkened kitchen exerted lethal intimidation. Silva calmly introduced Dr. Leah Grossman, Ph.D., CCBC, who'd administered Atlas's SAR certification. Grossman pointed to posture cues, ear set, mouth closed, tail level, showing controlled threshold guarding, not frenzied attack. When Hale pressed whether Pitbull genetics predisposed Atlas to maul, Grossman countered with peer-reviewed bite force and temperament data, statistically. The breed fell within median for household dogs. Then came the crown jewel. Silva asked permission for a live demonstration. Judge Kwan arched an eyebrow but allowed it. Grossman produced a collapsible foam bat. Standing 10 feet away, she raised it overhead in mock strike at a volunteer wearing a bite sleeve. Atlas watched, muscles cabled but eyes flicking to Marisol. Waiting cue. Marisol whispered. At ease. Atlas held position, even when Grossman advanced. Bat describing sloppy arcs. Atlas tracked but did not lunge. Grossman lowered bat. Praised dog. Atlas wagged. Jury pool in the gallery exhaled an audible collective breath. Ruling. Judge Kwan denied the suppression motion, ruling that Atlas's presence and actions were proportionate to defend a domicile. Mercer's confession stood. Trial date set for March. Media aftershock. Cable news spliced court footage with product placement B-roll of home speakers. Sales of Drop Guardian-compatible devices spiked 18% in a week. But Marisol had little time to savor. PB4C requested Atlas and her for a pilot program, Home Guardian Instructor Duo, teaching other dogs to trigger smart speaker emergency routines without confusing them with everyday barking at mail carriers. Meanwhile, City Council Tech Committee proposed a subsidy, discounts on smart speakers for residents who attended an approved canine emergency communication workshop. Insurance companies noticed. Safetown Mutual announced a 5% premium reduction for policyholders registering certified Home Guardian dogs. The pilot neighborhood, Elmhurst Towers and adjacent high-rise blocks. Shadow vulnerabilities. Not everyone applauded. Cybersecurity analyst Kara Bott posted a white paper highlighting smart speaker exploits. If a dog could trigger drop-in, so could a recorded bark played by a hacker outside the window. Forcing open audio channels for eavesdropping. PB4C convened a hackathon. Solutions emerged. Device firmware that validated acoustic signatures, unique bark formants much like Voice ID. Rowan named the patch Hush Guard and rolled it firmware-wide. Mercer's trial. Trial day felt anticlimactic. Jury deliberated 3 hours. Returned guilty on burglary while armed with a weapon, the screwdriver, and misdemeanor property damage. Sentencing. 4 years. Mandatory treatment program for opioid addiction. Hale vowed appeal, none materialized. Life goes on. Spring arrived. Atlas strutted across a stage at the Diesel Carter Satellite Campus in Chicago, receiving a teal collared tag etched with a microphone icon. Marisol accepted a plaque naming her inaugural Citizen Handler of the Year. She spoke briefly. Security isn't hardware. It's relationships we choose to reinforce with good tech. Atlas trusted the speaker because he trusts me. Back in Elmhurst Towers, evening routines resumed. Atlas snoozed while speakers played lo-fi jazz. Marisol charted patient vitals remotely. Yet every so often Atlas's ears pricked at hallway clatter. He'd glance at the speaker, as if weighing whether the low noise merited barking. Mostly he decided not. Edges were quiet again. Wider deployment. The Guardian loop. By year's end, PB4C's Home Guardian curriculum had certified 2.700 dogs worldwide. Success metrics flowed in. A 47% faster average intrusion detection when a trained dog plus smart speaker present. 0 false drop-ins after HushGuard update. Urban planning journals labeled it, crowdsourced canine police augment. Atlas. Semi-retirement. 2 years later, Atlas's muzzle frosted like sagebrush after a light snow. He still taught monthly classes but spent most afternoons sunbathing. Marisol rotated to a management nursing role, fewer overnight shifts. More time for hikes. One June thunderstorm knocked city power. Backup batteries kept hallway lights dim. Cell towers hiccuped. In the flicker of grid uncertainty, a drunk neighbor stumbled into the wrong apartment door. Atlas barked. Once. Marisol, awake, called out before tech needed to. The neighbor apologized, retreating. No smart system required. Sometimes presence alone, muscle, heart, sound, was enough. The closing scene. On the 5th anniversary of the break-in, local students held a STEM expo. Atlas lay under Marisol's table where posters displayed the Drop Guardian incident timeline. One child asked, "Will robots make dogs like Atlas unnecessary?" Marisol paused, hand resting on the warm rise and fall of a trusting companion's body. "Robots can listen," she said, "but dogs care why they're listening." Atlas opened one amber eye, maybe catching the word care, and thumped his tail against the linoleum floor, a soft punctuation mark at the end of a story still writing itself whenever a speaker lights up and a dog decides the time has come to let the world hear what danger sounds like. And somewhere down the hall, a smart speaker waited in silence, a sentinel standing by not for the scream, but for the first whispered warning carried on loyal vocal cords and the data packets they set in motion, for the edges that matter most often begin right at home. Sunlight slanted in through Elmhurst Tower's lobby skylight like pale ale over crushed ice, tinting the marble floor a mellow amber that made even the buzzing fluorescence feel warm. Atlas padded across that patch of sun one late September afternoon 4 years after the break-in. Nails clicking a rhythm that still made the doorman, Curtis, glance up in half-expectation of hearing gadget chimes. These days the lobby was outfitted with Home Guardian signage, blue stickers on the doors warning trespassers that canine-triggered smart devices monitored every floor. Curtis insisted that a lone cut after-hours prowlers in half, though he would add, with a wink, that the real deterrent was the big-headed fella in 14B. Atlas wore a fresh grooming brush-out, coat gleaming pewter and charcoal. White blazed down his chest, no longer bright as his youth but far from dull. Marisol walked beside him in cobalt scrubs, clutching a glossy pamphlet stamped City M's Canine Response Corps. Tonight's building tenants meeting would vote on whether to allocate funds for an in-house emergency protocol. Every floor captain equipped with a mesh router that tied directly into Drop Guardian channels, turning the entire complex into one contiguous audio safety grid. Atlas would demo a new routine, 2 barks followed by a yowl that triggered a fire door release in simulations. Marisol had practiced with him all month using a clicker and freeze-dried salmon nibbles. She set her bag down, ruffled behind Atlas's ears, and greeted Curtis, who launched into his usual kayfabe about local celebrity passing through. Marisol smiled politely, yet her mind drifted to headlines pulsing across the metropolitan area. A string of apartment burglaries where intruders spoofed contact sensors with magnified rare earth magnets. So far Drop Guardian defenses held. No dog in those buildings had triggered an alert, but the breach attempts felt like a tremor before a quake. Atlas didn't know it, but his demonstration tonight might prove pivotal. For weeks Marisol had Zoom chatted with PB4C engineers and Rowan Cho's cybersecurity adjunct, refining a countermeasure, bark print. HushGuard verified bark formants against a catalog, but bark print added temporal nuance, the milliseconds wide spacing between bark syllables. Like Morse but organic. Atlas's unique pattern served as cryptographic salt. A false playback wouldn't just need his timbre, it needed his timing. And given that Atlas never barked exactly the same way twice, the algorithm had a default tolerance window, if variance exceeded 4%. Drop Guardian would hold line muted until manual override. Tonight's vote must secure funding for bark print routers on every floor. They reached Community Room B where folding chairs encircled a projector screen. Property manager Ellen Hardwick shook Marisol's hand, then crouched to scratch Atlas's muzzle. Coffee aroma tangled with the paper dust smell of petition forms. Residents trickled in. Retirees in cardigans. Young professionals still wearing commuter earbuds. A cluster of college kids who'd once babysat Atlas when Marisol caught back-to-back double shifts. Ellen opened with boilerplate maintenance updates. Then seeded the floor. Marisol stepped forward. Atlas sat at heel. She spoke of trust. Of neighbors guarding neighbors. Of technology as translator for silent signals. She played the archived audio snippet, Atlas's bark echoing through the speaker minutes before officers Ramirez and Dunlop arrested Mercer. The room hushed. She talked cost. Barely $2 per unit per month folded into WA fees. She quoted insurance rebates. Then she nodded to Curtis at the back and cued the lights. From her pocket came the remote ID tag. She whispered. Guardian. Atlas inhaled, barked twice, a rolling thunder, and punctuated with an ascending yowl on cue. Ceiling speakers crackled to life, replicating the sequence across floors while hallway lights blinked teal. Residents glanced at confidant faces, nodding approval. A vote passed near unanimous. Afterwards the college kids clustered around. Could Atlas recognize each of their voices? Could he detect vape smoke? Did he ever get tired of saving the world? Marisol laughed, answered as best she could. Atlas flattened his ears with polite patience. Accepted a treat from each. The moment had the comfortable hum of community fortified. Like coffee thickened with just the right splash of cream. Yet the city beyond Elmhurst had no intention of staying still. In a warehouse district 90 blocks south, a hacker collective named Violet Latch rehearsed an exploit demonstration for a Black Hat conference, commandeering Drop Guardian firmware using Wi-Fi authentication storms and synthetic barks recorded from social media reels. Their goal? Prove corporate over-reliance on loyal for wear. The lead coder, alias Tin Ear, bragged on forums, "We'll break the dog whistle and whistle for the dog." PB4C's telemetry flagged escalating traffic on periphery subnets. IPs pinging dummy bark signatures. Rowan's lab cross-checked. They aligned with known Violet Latch nodes. She pinged Marisol. Potential local testbed risk. Bark print deployment must accelerate. 3 nights after the complex vote. At 2:14 a.m. A spiky susurrus of Wi-Fi handshake requests blanketed Elmhurst towers. Routers hiccuped. Some IoT bulbs flashed cyan unprompted. Inside 14B, Atlas stirred on the couch. Through apartment walls came the faintest echo of his own bark, piped in from a directional speaker stationed outside by Violet Latch. The mimicry was good, pitch near perfect, but not rhythm. Atlas's brow furrowed. If dogs have brows, he barked back once. Uncertain, the speaker outside played a second bark identical to the first. Brittle and mechanical at tails. This time Drop Guardian paused. Analyzing bark print disparity. Marisol's phone buzzed. Possible spoof flagged. She squinted at the timestamp. Adrenaline blotting sleep haze. Atlas jumped off the couch. Nails scritching. Marisol whispered his cue. Guardian. He barked 2 tight booms. Yowled. Then stood poised at kitchen threshold listening. Emulated bark outside repeated again. But routine refused handshake. With no open audio channel to piggyback, hackers lost vantage. They pivoted to contact sensor spoof. Sliding magnets along external frame. Door sensors pinged offline only to bounce back a second later as PB4C's new magnetometer subroutine caught flux inconsistencies. Tin Ear cursed, their demo failing. Atlas, though ignorant of exploit details, scented unusual human sweat outside the deadbolt. He barked ferociously. A rumble that traveled down hallway plaster like a plow. Tenants stirred. An elder veteran above stomped floorboards, brandishing decade-old service pistol. Tin Ear and crew retreated into darkness. Plot aborted. Next morning Rowan published a white paper addendum. Bark print and magnet flux coupling neutralize coordinated spoof attack. News outlets latched, flipping the would-be breach into further validation. Violet latch, ironically, boosted adoption they'd wished to derail. Months turned. Atlas aged gracefully, though slower to retrieve tennis balls. PB4C's Urban Safety Division expanded courses. Labrador mixes in Boston triggering carbon monoxide drop-ins. Shepherds in Berlin paired with smart home flood sensors. Atlas's story headlined the curriculum's opening video. Then came the apartment fire night. A tenant on floor 20 fell asleep with hot oil on the stove. The smoke alarm chirped, but she'd disabled buzzer earlier that month after steam false alarms. Smoke wisped under her door, curling up vents. Atlas, on floor 14, caught the acrid ribbon and barked. Not guardian call but frantic distress. Marisol jostled awake, phone already buzzing with building sensor anomaly. Atlas pounded hallway door. Marisol cracked it. Smoke haze thin but telling. She hit guardian. Smart speaker cascades ignited through units. Drop-ins automatically ringing residents. Hall strobes firing. Within 2 minutes, sprinklers triggered. Fire trucks rolled in 10 minutes later to a building already half evacuated. No casualties, minor inhalation cases only. City Fire Marshal's after-action report credited K9 early detection integrated with voice-activated IoT chain for keeping toll nil. Insurance again took note. Another scholarship funded. Atlas's 15th birthday arrived with sunrise haze. Marisol donned a party hat on his grizzled head. Curtis from lobby delivered a pupcake shaped like a smart speaker. Atlas sniffed, tail slow. That afternoon he made a final cameo at the Diesel Carter Center's annual summit. Trotting across stage while Rowan recounted the bark print saga. Researchers unveiled a plaque. Atlas, prototype of domestic sentinels. Cameras flashed. Atlas gazed into crowd. Ears half raised as though scanning years of audio memories. Age crept faster thereafter. One winter dawn Atlas failed to wake for breakfast. The vet diagnosed cardiomyopathy. Medication eased breath but prognosis clear. Marisol rearranged her shifts. Spent nights on the floor beside his orthopedic bed. Listening to the whisper of his lungs like tide ebb. One April evening, cherry blossoms squalled through open window. Atlas lifted his head, stared at the Echo Nexus one last time. As if content no edges pressed anymore. He exhaled gently and stilled. Marisol laid her cheek to his. Saline drops darkening brindle. Atlas's ashes joined Meridian's phage formulation. This batch tailored to urban water pipes plagued by biofilm. On release day, city engineers flushed hydrants. 250,000 residents unknowingly drank water secured by dog guardianship. The Home Guardian program rebranded AtlasNet. Each new domesticated sentinel wore a tag. I listen for Atlas. Kids pressed their palms to tags during classroom demonstrations. Feeling embossed paw pads. Years later, a graduate student analyzing global intrusion statistics discovered a curious artifact. Burglary success rates plummeted most sharply in neighborhoods where canine drop-in adoption had reached 1 in 4 households. Edge theory held again. A communal wall built dog by dog. Bark by verified digital bark. On a bench outside Elmhurst Towers, renovated now with living green balconies, Marisol sat gray-haired but bright-eyed. Watching a neighbor's young rescue. Luna, practice bark prints through an open window. Luna's guardian called thanks across the courtyard. Your Atlas is still the gold standard. Marisol smiled. She closed her eyes, hearing a spectral bark echo through memory. One that traveled a data cable across miles, reshaping how cities defined response time. The edges kept moving outward, the guardians kept pace. And somewhere in the firmware of millions of speakers, a small snippet of acoustic fingerprint labeled AT001 lived on. Atlas's first heroic bark. Stored like a heartbeat waiting to teach the next loyal protector how to speak loud enough for technology. And for people to listen before danger could finish its thought. The day Luna earned her vest. A humid July haze lay over the city like steamed glass, blurring the skyline into watercolor blotches. She was a lean chocolate brindle pitbull mix with latte-colored socks and a single white blaze that ran from her nose to the midpoint between her amber eyes. At 20 months old, she had already logged hundreds of training minutes at the Diesel Carter Center's satellite campus. But this morning was different. She was about to graduate into AtlasNet Phase 2, Multi-Signal Guardianship. A program that merged canine bark print authentication with environmental sensor fusion and a brand new layer of synthetic speech feedback the engineers called Echo Loop. Echo Loop meant that once a dog triggered an alert, the smart speaker system could answer back in a distinct tone and vocabulary meant only for trained dogs. No words humans would understand, just broadband trills and sub-bass purrs tuned to canine cochleas. It would tell Luna, "Stay and guard or evacuate," and lead. The best trainers believed dogs like Luna would adapt, translating speaker songs into action, forming a dialogue between instinct and algorithm. Marisol Vega stood off to the side of the training arena, fingers curled tight around a faded lanyard that still held Atlas's old certification badge. She breathed in the smell of artificial turf and rubbed concrete, the same smell the arena had the day Atlas lumbered through his final demonstration. Rowan Cho entered, a step slower than she moved 10 years prior but eyes bright as ever. She carried a tablet displaying a heat map of global AtlasNet activations: Boston, Berlin, Nairobi, Sao Paulo, Seoul. Each pin pulsed teal every time a dog's bark print launched an acoustic handshake. This morning's final test involved a synthetic threat scenario. Luna and her handler, Aisha Coleman, waited just outside a mocked-up apartment built within the training hangar. Inside, a burglar actor would attempt sensor spoofing, including the new hardware hack called Hot Mouth, where a would-be intruder used a thermal noise gun that spat randomized heat signatures over door and window contacts. Hoping to fool sensors into thinking surfaces never changed temperature when forced open. The previous month, a hot-mouth attacker had tricked a half-dozen apartments into ignoring his entry. AtlasNet V2 was designed to stop that. A klaxon chirped. Aisha unclipped Luna's leash and whispered, "Begin." Luna trotted into the dimly lit mock living room. The burglar, actually an off-duty firefighter named Theo, was crouched at the balcony door, waving the hot-mouth gun in slow arcs. He shoved a credit card shim into the lock. Luna's nose flared. She barked once, twice. Yowl. Her bark print signature captured by the Echo Nexus prototype perched on a bookcase. The device instantly compared temporal contours against Luna's stored profile. Match. The burglar's smartphone simultaneously fired a recorded bark stolen from social media, Luna's own voice, but chopped and looped. Echo Nexus flagged the duplicate as frequency matching but spacing mismatched. No legit canine would bark with identical envelope shapes 5 times in a row. The device withheld drop-in for half a second, just long enough to issue a low-frequency reply tone, "Stay and guard." Luna shifted stance, blocking the burglar's path to the hallway that led to the child bedroom. She bared teeth just enough to show intent, not blood. Outside the mock apartment, data scrolled on Rowan's tablet. Bark ID accepted. Spoof rejected. Thermal spoof challenge flagged. Echo Nexus called a virtual 911 endpoint hosted on the secure test server. The callback sequence completed in under 2 seconds. In the real world, that would be the local emergency dispatch. In training, a strobe light signified sirens inbound. Luna held position calmly until Theo threw up his hands. Okay, I'm sorry." Trainers clapped. The burglar handed Luna a slice of freeze-dried beef as a peace token. She accepted with a gentle chomp. When the lights came up, Marisol walked onto the set, badge in fist. She knelt before Luna, smoothing ears. The dog licked her chin, tasting salt of tears Marisol hadn't realized spilled. Rowan joined them, draped a new collar tag, flat matte titanium etched with a dog-ear silhouette and the code Lane 009, Luna's global identifier. Night fell on graduation day, and Marisol's building lobby glowed with an aurora of smart bulb hues synchronized to AtlasNet's new servers. Luna pressed her nose to every hand offered, tail now a whirring gyroscope. The resident who'd once babysat Atlas, now a paramedic, asked if Luna understood that this was, in essence, her first day on duty. Marisol answered, "Dogs understand presence, that's duty enough." A string of strange signals. Less than a month later, Luna's skills were tested for real. A rash of small fires swept the city. Always in buildings recently upgraded to bark print routers. Arson detectives traced the pattern. A hacker or group dubbed Ghost Pyre was activating gas ranges via vulnerable smart oven firmware. Then trying to keep alarms offline by saturating Wi-Fi channels with ultrasonic noise, below human hearing but deeply unsettling to dogs. On a damp September night, Unit 17C's oven clicked on at 3:07 a.m. unbeknownst to residents. A gas main leak earlier that day had left a small pocket of methane near lower cabinets. Luna, asleep beside Marisol's bed 2 floors down, sprang up. The ultrasonic jammer fluttered like insect wings in the hallway, making her ears pin flat. She barked, but the echo nexus in her apartment defaulted to standby, jamming stifled handshake. Instead, Luna bolted through the dog door onto the balcony. Head tilted aloft, wind carried faint methane odor too thin for instruments. Thick for a pit bull, she barked toward the apartment vents overhead. Aisha, who had dozed on Marisol's couch after movie night, woke. Checked the time, recognized Luna's alarm. She used the fallback protocol, double-tap smartwatch. AtlasNet's off-site server dialed building security and municipal dispatch simultaneously. Bypassing local Wi-Fi, firefighters alerted, raced to 17C. They broke the door to find the oven glowing and a Tupperware of leftover curry sizzling on top. The homeowner swore he never set a timer. Investigators recovered code snippets from the Wi-Fi router. A shell script linking the oven's REST API to a dark web forum handle. But Ghostpire's bigger plan, igniting a gas pocket, failed because a dog's sense outpaced software. Luna received city commendation, but the story raised a new specter: weaponized IoT. Rowan drafted a white paper urging regulators to adopt a concept called canine loop hard fallback, when network integrity dropped below threshold. Home sensors should trust authenticated canine signals even if local Wi-Fi channels were saturated. European Union digital safety bodies adopted the policy in their Smart Device Act revision. Edge of pandemic memory. That same autumn, influenza X spread across metro hospitals, forcing rolling nurse shortages. Marisol logged overtime while Luna stayed on site with Aisha running microshifts. In nights alone, the dog scanned hallways through door cracks, ears rotating like twin satellites. One early morning she barked the Guardian code at 4:11, rousing Marisol mid-charting. A man had collapsed 2 doors down from a heart attack. His smart speaker recognized cough patterns but hadn't activated due to missed firmware update. Luna's bark turned the speaker into emergency mic. EMTs revived the man with minutes to spare. AtlasNet added, medical anomaly escalate, to default routines. Rise of the built-in sentinel. Tech companies started embedding bark print modules directly into routers. New buildings advertised sentient Sentry suites, coaxial cables pre-wired, pet-friendly surfaces, acoustic baffles tuned to amplify low-frequency canine speech toward microphones. Critics decried a surveillance state run by dogs. Proponents rebutted that no dog had ever leaked user data for profit. Marisol's legacy project. In 2034, Marisol's nephew, a graduate student in behavioral AI, released Bark 2 Vec, an embedding model that mapped canine vocalizations into a 3-dimensional intent space, guard, alert, greeting, distress, allowing devices to understand nuance beyond volume. Luna contributed 10.000 labeled barks to the training dataset, making her voice part of global software. One crisp December night, a solar flare took down half the city's cell towers. IoT cloud reliance faltered. AtlasNet's peer-to-peer mesh, however, stayed local. Luna's building remained blanketed in neighborhood Wi-Fi, no central cloud required. When a transformer blew and sparks rained, setting a rooftop tar seam ablaze, Luna barked. Her bark print traveled mesh hops to off-site servers, then back to ground fire crews, bridging the flare blackout. In after-action debrief, city engineers admitted, "We planned for cosmic weather. We didn't plan for cosmic weather plus a dog's conscience." Luna's sunset and new moons. Years passed. Luna aged, muzzle frosting to echo Atlas's ghost. In her last season she served mostly as auntie to a new recruit, a young terrier pit cross named Icarus. Abandoned outside the diesel center with a note, "Too anxious." Rowan's genetic swab glowed edge marked Delta bright. Under Luna's tutelage, Icarus learned to convert anxiety into vigilance. Nails clicking in Luna's cadence. On a June evening painted violet by thunderclouds, Luna's heart gave out as she slept under a smart speaker that once answered only to Atlas. Icarus nosed her still ribcage. Issued a low keening wail, captured on Bark 2 Vecca's grief. Networks across AtlasNet dimmed icons for 1 hour. Teal fading to gray. The world noticed. Trending tags read #Thank you Luna. Marisol, now semi-retired, mixed Luna's ashes with silver iodide seeds used to neutralize electrical arcing in powerline insulators. Engineers dusted them along the city grid. Next lightning season showed a measurable drop in transformer fires. The next frontier, organic, digital feedback. Rowan's final research push focused on creating Neuro 1. A biocompatible ear tag that read subtle EEG spikes in canine auditory cortex, converting them into encrypted signals. For the first time, the system wouldn't wait for a dog to bark. It would listen to the spark of recognition inside the dog's mind. Trials with Icarus showed an 8-second speed advantage, time enough to matter when edges thin like ice. Epilogue. One late autumn dusk, Marisol visited Ivy Glen Bench. Bronze Diesel wore a fine patina. Meridian's plaque nearby. Atlas's digitized bark piping softly from a solar-powered speaker loop celebrating legacy. Marisol placed a collar tag embossed Luna 12 among fallen leaves. In the distance, Icarus trotted past, tail high, sensor harness blinking. A child asked her father if the dog was a cop. The father shook his head. "Better than that," he said. "He's a listener." Stars winked on, one by one, above a skyline where building after building whispered secured edges into the night. A choir of dogs and devices singing the oldest lullaby. All is watched. All is well, we are here before harm. And somewhere beyond city noise, a new puppy lifted its head, smelled something out of place, and took its first deep breath of duty. Ready to continue the story long after names faded but the listening remained. A late spring thunderhead rolled over the city 2 years after Luna's passing. Towering black and violet like a cathedral struck from stormglass. Weather satellites warned it would deliver the worst electrical barrage since the geomagnetic superpulse of 32. Utility crews fanned out, pre-staging splice kits at substations. AtlasNet servers throttled bandwidth to prioritize emergency packets. And on a 7th-floor balcony of the renovated Elmhurst Towers, a youthful terrier pit mix named Icarus lifted his nose to a wind that tasted like copper filings and ozone. Down on street level, Marisol Vega, now a visiting lecturer in community resilience at State Polytech, was helping new tenants move in. She wore a lightweight exoskeleton brace these days, its servos guiding a knee made cranky by decades of nursing shifts. Yet when she saw clouds flicker strobe white, instinct tugged her head upward, as though expecting the original sentinel, Atlas, to appear tail flagging on some rooftop. Instead she spotted Icarus, silhouette framed by crackling sky, his sensor harness pulsing amber, reactive mode. Inside the building's smart core router, Neuro 1 ear tags captured a ripple in Icarus's auditory cortex, pre-bark recognition of high-frequency transformer hum. He hadn't barked yet, but the system registered the neural spike, converted it into a class beta alert. 2 milliseconds later, bark print buffers verified tag ownership, and AtlasNet mesh shot a packet downstairs to Marisol's wrist display. Edge whisper detected. Transformer imminent flashover. Block 23J. Location pulsed 2 blocks west. Marisol's training kicked free of nostalgia. She pulled her phone, tapped the AtlasNet emergency tile, selected the new quick action. Reroute drone extinguisher. 10 stories overhead. One of the fire department's quad rotors diverted mid-patrol, arrowing toward 23J with a payload of dielectric coolant. It reached the transformer pole seconds before a secondary lightning strike would have found its fault line. A foamy white plume enveloped ceramic insulators, voltage spasm stabilized. Houses on the block flickered but never went dark. Icarus, still on the balcony, finally let out a single, declarative woof, more punctuation than alarm. The equivalent of a nod. Job done. The Neuro 1 logs would later show that the neural whistle preceded the physical bark by 7 full seconds. Enough to stop a cascade blackout. Night deepened. The supercell marched east, hammering less prepared suburbs where AtlasNet coverage remained spotty. But a federal grant, unlocked hours after news broke of Icarus's preempt, aimed to fix that. Every utility district above 200,000 customers would receive funding to subsidize canine integrated edge sensors. Legislators called the amendment the Luna Clause, honoring the dog whose bark had foiled Ghostfire's gasfire spree. Rowan Cho watched coverage from her cabin office overlooking the Diesel Carter campus lake. She was on the cusp of semi-retirement, grooming successors to steer PB4C into a 10th jurisdiction. Or maybe the lunar colonies once helium-3 extraction began. Her holoscreen showed rolling graphs, canine neural detections layered atop sensor telemetry. A line chart tracking, seconds gained before event, trended steadily upward across decades. Proof that listening moved earlier and earlier along catastrophe's timeline. At the chart's top right corner, a faint watermark of Diesel's silhouette lingered. Ever watching? That same evening, a time zone away, Sydney's Opera House spires shimmered gold while Quokka's grand pup, Breaker, completed his first harbor patrol. Micro-sensors on the Sydney Fish Market dock had twitched at possible antitoxin. Breaker's bark print confirmed before fishermen cast pre-dawn nets. In Rotterdam, Fenway's progeny, Tessel, used Echo Loop to reroute a wandering toddler away from an automated key crane. In Nairobi, Quito, descendant of Beacon, identified VOC traces from illegally dumped solvents before they reached the Athi River. Dots of teal light on the global diesel index flared like fireflies in a summer field. Back in Marisol's apartment, she brewed chamomile, listening to wind-ride ventilation grills. Icarus lay at her feet, head resting on the titanium collar tag etched IC041. She scrolled an old video, Atlas turning toward a speaker. That first life-saving bark. The audio felt archaic in an era when silent neural spikes now sprinted through mesh networks. But its echo remained anchor. She typed a note for her next university lecture. Technology will always outpace peril. But compassion must outpace technology. Dogs taught us that. Thunder receded to a distant grumble, like a story almost finished telling itself. Streetlights outside flickered steady amber, apartment windows glowed television blue. Somewhere far above, satellites relayed new weather fronts. Somewhere nearer, a dog in a small bedroom stirred, ears cocked to subtle shifts none of its human family could perceive. The edges would keep appearing, at doorways, on lakes, in clouds spinning over Martian craters, and the listening would follow. Woven now into a tapestry of genes and code, bark and bandwidth, heart and silicon, Marisol closed her eyes, let chamomile steam fog her glasses. Icarus sighed, content, and across a planet safer than the one Diesel had inherited. A quiet vow unspooled in countless homes. Notice the whisper. Guard the edge, trust the listener.